Hello. I am going to try and talk about Cool Spot. I am not sure if it has. Does it have a subtitle? It doesn't seem to have a subtitle. I know there are other Cool Spot games, so I was wondering about that. Cool Spot. I suppose that means this is the first Cool Spot game? I don't know. I suppose it is. It's interesting. I was reading up a little bit about this. Apparently, this game was made very soon after the mascot Cool Spot was launched as a mascot officially, apparently. So, if that's the case, that's very interesting. I don't know what that means. It could mean, for example, speculatively, that this mascot was created with games in mind. So that's probably an interesting kind of development in history of that specific period. 90s-y, early 90s, yeah. Because, right, it might be an era where suddenly video games based off mascots are bleeding into the mascots themselves. Anyway, not sure if that's something I want to explore exactly, but thought that was interesting. So, okay. This game is very strange. I'm not sure if this game has like an actual plot in it in the manual. In fact, that might be good to check. No, it doesn't matter. I don't want to check it. I don't feel like it. I'll check it some other moment. I think that at the moment, though, one thing I'd say though is it's funny how the game starts with Cool Spot looking at a map, and he's like, okay, so directions, and he finally decides and goes in the absolute opposite direction. Right, there is a big sign that says this way towards whatever stage it is that you're going to, and you end up going in the exact opposite direction. Now, why or what, right? What? The key thing, I think, maybe, is that you experience this first stage twice. You experience it once at the start and once again at the very end of the game. Obviously, it's hard to tell whether it's literally the same beach, but I suppose it's supposed to be the same beach. So there's this process by which you start the game at one location, you go on this enormous journey, and then you return to exactly the same place at the end. So that has been your journey. You've gone through some sort of a circular journey by which you've gone through a whole series of lands, and you ended up at exactly the place where you started. I don't think this is a mistake. I don't think this is Cool Spot getting lost, although it is interesting to note that he obviously gets lost with the map at the beginning. So it sort of suggests that maybe his journey, his travel, isn't one where organization is a big factor, which could play into why he ends up doing some sort of circular route. But I don't get that sense intuitively. I get the sense that this is a journey that takes him to a specific location. I think that the goal of the journey is the center of the journey, and then there is a return, because you literally, the levels seem to suggest that you're going back at the very end of the game, because you experience the wall stage, off the wall stage again, then the the sort of boat, the yacht stage again. Right? Yeah. And then the beach stage again. So as far as I can tell, that's a literal inversion. You start off with beach, yacht, wall, and then you end with wall, yacht, beach. So you're coming back. You're coming back home. You're returning from the trip. So the trip, at some point, must reach a sort of climax towards the middle. I'm not sure exactly where to locate this climax, but I feel that there is some sort of a climax. Okay, anyway, so these are a few first things to suggest about this. The first stage is called shell shock. I'm curious about that name because, as far as I can tell, that suggests a sort of explosive experience, or some sort of like an experience of trauma. Yeah, right. It's combat stress reaction. It's the effect of having been in war, and then like it's the aftermath of that at the personal level. Some sort of like a. I suppose I'm not an expert on this. I suppose it's the way in which even daily life can seem to be extremely stressful, or something can generate an incredible sort of return of the trauma of having been in conflict situation. Okay. Well, if it is that, let's keep that in mind as we move through this. See, okay, who is Cool Spot? Like, what is he? At the very start of the game. Like, okay, according to the manual, it's a he, and he is rescuing his friends, apparently. So, Spot and his friends, Spot, and Spot, are in trouble and they need help fast. Okay, so his friends are in trouble. Okay, that's the thing, right? He's rescuing these people, and he's rescuing them from these cages. I always found very intriguing because they're checkerboard designed in black and white. There's a sort of coolness to the cage itself. It feels like it's like a cool design for a cage. But I don't know, something about that cage intrigued me. Obviously, on the one hand, you could say it's the typical sort of duality duality thing. It's black and white, light and dark thing that may be explored, and maybe that's where his friends are trapped. On the other hand, all his friends have exactly the same name as him and are identical to him. It's hard to differentiate whether, who's who exactly. So it opens up the possibility, and the game is sort of playing, in a sense, that's the joke, right? All of his friends have the same name as him. So there's no clear identity boundary between himself and his friends exactly, except for the fact that he's free and they are not. So maybe his friends are him, right? It's all one identity. It's just that maybe this identity is being rescued again and again, or something, maybe perhaps to that effect. Okay, this manual is going to give a lot of stuff to read, apparently. Old news. For years, Wild Wicked... What is going on? Okay. Wild Wicked Wily Will. Who is he? This is amazing to me. I love this. Like, why do they introduce a character that doesn't appear in the game? As far as I can tell, does he appear in the game? I've never seen this. It's so cool. As far as I can tell, there are no images of this guy in the manual. So that's really cool, I think. Wild Wicked Wily Will. Interesting. Okay, wily, so he's deceitful, maybe. There is something deceitful about him. Uh, okay, I don't know what I'm going to be able to say about this manual at this point, but it's very interesting. Definitely very interesting. Wicked Will, something strange about him. Because they keep playing with his name a little bit, and I assume the game is originally written in English. I don't think this is a translation. So there are these puns like will will be will be back any minute, right? Or then the last thing is will you be cool enough before Will gets his wicked hands on them? I sense like they're playing with his name a little bit. His name, in a sense, already is a strange kind of like amalgamation of W's. Don't know what to say about this, but we will keep it in mind. Apparently, you weren't caught because you were out surfing at the time. So there is something about you escape being trapped, because instead of being in a specific location in the world, you're out at sea. You're flowing. There's something about you that is flowing. I assume maybe that there is something about you that is in movement. There is something about you that is in constant movement, and that's why you avoid getting trapped. That could be it. See, it's interesting because one thing I noticed in this game, just looking through it, is that there is a sort of strange tendency towards the center of the game to have very fast-moving levels. There are two fast-moving levels in particular. One is this sort of like, what's it called? On the rails level, I think. God. There's one where you're sort of just moving through rails, but it's just you moving through the rails. There's no vehicle. You are the vehicle moving through this sort of rail system. And then... okay, anyway, yeah. So you're the one moving on the rails. You become literally a wheel, cartwheeling on these rails. That's one of the levels towards the center. And then I think that soon after you're on a train. So you're on tracks again. On tracks, on rails, something like that. Right? So there is movement. There are these two levels towards... It's not the center of the game, but it's... I feel like they're markedly different in design from the others. The others are all just these still sort of environments, more or less. And suddenly you get these two levels where there is a lot of movement. And specifically, on rails movement. And in one of them, you are the vehicle, you are the wheel that turns on the rails. And on the other one, it materializes into an actual train that's on the rails. And then it is after this train level, if I am not mistaken, that you start backtracking home. You go back to the wall, and then back to the yacht, and then back to the beach. So I suppose I brought this up just because I mentioned this issue of movement, right? It feels as if maybe Cool Spot survived the engagement because he was moving, he was surfing. And something about this game seems to lead him towards a culmination of movement, right? First, there is a proto-movement where he is circling on these rails, and then there's this full-blown train experience, and then you return. So it seems to be like an experience of movement, again, which maybe is what saved him in the first place. Okay. So that could be it. in on that note, it might be interesting also to mention that in the manual, on the sides of the pages, there are little drawings of Cool Spot, clearly designed to be an animation. So you would you would flick the manual, and suddenly you would see a walking Cool Spot on the manual pages. So it's also it's turning Spot into the frames in an animation, but also into someone who is in perpetual motion, right? The manual itself, which is comprised of still images and still text, includes within itself movement. Spot appears as a moving character, as an animated character. Right? Flip pages to see Spot walk. Okay. And God, also the manual mentions that Cool Spot has never been spotted. Right? He's never been seen. And so Wily Will, his intention is to prove to the world that they exist, that spots exist. So he has trapped them in cages. They are something that can't be seen, that can't be spotted. Why? That sort of maybe equates them to the traditional image of like a fairy or something, you know, someone that you can't see, someone that's like a tiny little creature, and there's a lot of them, and they exist out in the world, but they can't be seen somehow. Maybe, right? Something like that is maybe happening. I don't know. Okay, cool. The manual actually gives us a lot of information. There's a lot of stuff about the levels. Apparently, in the wall is the inside of the wall near... So, okay, it says, Hugh, you made it to the inside of the wall near the toy store. Okay. So, clearly then, the toy store... It resolves several issues for me, which is that I never knew exactly what that toy place was the first time around. I thought it was just meant to be someone's bedroom. It could still be someone's bedroom, you know, if the symbolism works, but it's interesting to see that according to the manual, it's a toy store. So it's a place of selling toys, and that the walls are the walls of the toy store. They separate the outside world from the inside world. So you're outside, beach, ship, and then you transition towards the toy store, perhaps. So maybe that's one of the things that's happening. Okay. That's interesting. It gives a little sort of sense of direction of where you're going. Also, how funny is it that there are programmer's hints? I love that. I don't think I'd ever seen anything like this in a manual. I think it's so cool. It's so sort of like from an other era or something, you know. Someone giving you actual tips about the game, and it's supposed to be the programmer who made the game. So it's the programmer of the game speaking to you. There's something really funny about that also, because it's a complete break of the fourth wall and a break of the magic of the game, in a sense, which I really like. And it is kind of typical of the 90s, it seems, where the programmer is talking to you. There's a total awareness that this game is a programmed game, that what you're seeing is something that has been programmed by someone, and that someone who's talking to you is aware of it and is playing into the game. The programmer's like, ouch, those nasty bees or whatever, you know. So the programmer has programmed the game and the bees, but the programmer is taking seriously the idea that, you know, be careful with those bees. It's a cool, there's a sort of playful aspect to it of I'm going to pretend that this game is real, you know. We're going to pretend together, both the creator of the game and you, the player of the game. We are sort of here together to immerse ourselves in this world of, I don't know. I thought that that was cool. I like that in a sense. Oh my god. Yes, this manual is very strange. I'm not sure what else to say now about it. But clearly, one thing I'm fascinated by is that this all seems to take place inside a toy store. I had no idea. Like, apparently this seems to be the narrative, which is that after the first 3 levels, you move through the wall, and then you're in a toy store. Then most levels after that, waiting around, locomotive, the train level is the toy store. Radical Rails apparently is the toy store too. And I can see now, obviously, there are toys in it. There's Jack in the Boxes and things like that. So everything is toys in between the 2 walls. And then you exit, and then the first 3 levels and the last 3 levels are the same. So this is not such a varied sort of journey as I thought. It's mainly a journey into a toy store. You're moving through the toy store, collecting all the spots, and then exiting. Why? Why were all the spots in a toy store? What was so fun about the toy store? Well, because there are toys, I suppose, right? And toys are fun. So I suppose all of your spot friends were there because they were just trying to have fun at the most fun place possible, which is the toy store, the place where fun is made and exists. Perhaps, right? And then, of course, it also means that the game starts and ends with very relaxed levels, beach. Then you move into this hectic sort of robotic toys place, and it's all sorts of weird, bizarro toys, right? Because there's UFOs and giant mouths. There's also like jet fighter planes. There's sort of all sorts of things. And then you exit it, and you're back at the beach, relaxing beach. Boom, the end. Okay, that's probably a good enough place to start, so to speak. Like, I think that after this, other things could be said about this game, but I suppose I do want to end with one thing, which sort of confirms something I thought. I always thought Cool Spot represented the sun. And I'm not sure how to explain this, but I see that this manual places 2 columns of images on either side of the pages. On one side, there is this animated cool spot. And on the other side, there is a sun. There is literally a drawing of the sun, which obviously is a reddish spot. It's an orange spot here, but they're placing these 2 images side by side as if they're, I feel, as if equaling them. So there is a big red spot of fire, which is the sun, and then there is red spot himself as a spot, just as a spot of fire. That may be why he's surfing a flamed surfboard. So he's surfing on the water, but with a flamed surfboard. So that there is this sort of irony there of he's using fire, which is something that usually is opposed to water, and that in some ways would become extinguished by water maybe, but it isn't. It's like he's cool enough to ride that wave, and it's right. He's using fire to ride water. Perhaps that's one thing that he's doing, and he's being enveloped completely by the wave. Visually, but again, not drowning. It's like him and the wave are together somehow. There is a cool sense of flow, I suppose, between them. So okay. Anyway, yeah. That I mean, there are probably all sorts of consequences to draw from that, right? Why is he a son? What does that have to do with the game? The game seems to take place during the course of a day and of sun rising and setting. That seems to be part of what's going on, because the last three stages, except the beach stage, but the last stages have a sunset. So the first iterations are daytime, the last iterations are afternoon. So there has been a transition from day to night, and Spot has seen that entire transition from one place to the other. In some way also you could say that he starts from the sea, right? He starts from the beach. In fact, how did you say? He arrives on the beach from his surf bottle. That's the whole idea. He's been surfing. He was surfing, but then he surfs onto the beach. And then from the beach he moves, goes into the giant sort of mechanized toy store scenario, and then exits, and the sun is setting. And so the sun is setting, you could say maybe the sun usually sets into the sea. So he has risen out of the sea as the sun rises out of the sea, gone the whole way across the sky, and then set down back into the sea. So maybe that's why he's a sun in that sense. Just that he is taking this path from shore to shore, maybe. Yeah. And it's also interesting how then the game is a process by which you go from the outside, the sea, the sky, out into like an inner world, a building. The toy store is a building. You're in that building. And Spot can move through the walls. Like, the manual makes this clear, which is funny because they're referring to the walls within the wall in the game, the walls within the level. There are these sort of walls that are like slightly transparent or something the Spot can walk through. So it's making clear that Spot can walk through walls where other people maybe wouldn't be able to. But also, it's also making clear, the level design is making clear that Spot is walking through a wall right now. He's walking from the outside of the wall to the inside of the wall. He's walking through a wall. He's walking through... See, why are his other friends trapped? Because they're trapped in a cage. They're trapped in between bars, in between walls. They somehow can't move through these walls. They can't escape these walls. But Spot can. Spot can move through walls. So Spot moves through walls, rescues, all of his friends, and then goes back to the sea. So there's something maybe about that moving through walls thing. And it makes me think also of the fact that Cool Spot is wearing sunglasses. So it's funny because if he's a sun, then it's the joke of like, I'm a sun who wears sunglasses. I am somehow, impacted by my own coolness, by my own sort of radiance. Something about my own radiance is even impactful to me, or like I represent the act of radiating something. And it's something that can spread across boundaries. Maybe. So things I need to look at next, I suppose, is the theme of war. I'm intrigued by the potential theme of war, which reappears because there are fighter jets dropping bombs in the toy stores. Like, toys are harmless, fun things, but because of that, they're able to evoke very traumatic things in this sort of slightly distanced form that allows you to like take them in almost. There are these sort of echoes of trauma, of battle, cowboys and bombs falling and things like that. And yeah, okay, so I suppose that's one thing. the themes of war and conflict. And related to that, the names of the levels. The names of the levels are also often puns or jokes, but some of them are kind of like scary puns or scary jokes, like shell shock, like I'm thinking of wound up. You know, if you're wound up, it doesn't feel good to be wound up. Or peer pressure. There are like a lot of puns and references to stress and anxiety. The opposite in a sense of being cool. Mm. Okay, so let's just leave it there and see where we head on from here next time. Okay, bye.